I want to share with you a tradition from my family that comes from my Nana's family, who her parents immigrated from a small town in Abruzzo, Italy. And when they came, they brought their tradition of making pizzelle. So this pizzelle was made by my dad. And we do anise flavored pizzelle. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this cookie, you can see it's a wafer thin cookie. We make this cookie around Christmas time, and we do it with an iron. It used to be that the irons you would put over coals, and I've been told by people that you say the Hail Mary, then you flip and you say the Hail Mary again, and then that's how you know when the cookie's done. We just set a timer for a minute. But now we have electric irons, and actually the electric pizzelle iron was first created here in West Newton, Pennsylvania. So that's a little fun fact about the tool, and you will still see these in Italian American households today. And this was actually made in Florida and mailed to me here in Pittsburgh.
My family participated in the tradition of the pickle ornament, which would mean that on Christmas Eve, Santa would hide the pickle ornament somewhere on the tree, and whichever child found the pickle ornament on Christmas morning would get an extra and an extra special present from Santa. I grew up with 2 siblings, so there were 3 of us looking for the pickle ornament, and we are very competitive, have always been, and it really probably started here that we were so competitive. Obviously the tree was probably a normal sized tree, but when you're a little kid, it feels like the tree is huge and you have to look forever. It felt like hours, but it's probably like 10 seconds. There would be elbows flying, there would be climbing on top of each other. I was always considered to be at an advantage at that time because I was the oldest, so I could look higher in the tree. But we would find the pickle ornament, and then whoever found it first would triumphantly pluck it from the tree and run around shouting insults, and then get their extra present. But as time went on, I think my parents thought that practice was like a bit too cruel, and so they changed the rules a little bit. And so the rules became whoever found the pickle ornament first got to go look around the house for an extra present that was hidden somewhere in the house, but the present ultimately would be for all of us to share.
My family goes back to Western Pennsylvania since 1783, and we've inherited a few traditions. I mean, eggnog and cider, caroling, carrying old sleigh bells from the family farm near Conneaut Lake. But with my kids, and I have 3 children, we grew up sort of creating our own traditions. Each child gets a new ornament for the tree each year, and it's dated and signed. And on Christmas Eve, this is pretty weird, we listen to the rock opera of War of the Worlds. Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds rock opera, and it's a dramatic production, and it's long, and it goes on forever, and we sit around in our pajamas and drink hot spiced cider and eat cinnamon toast and things like that. So that's sort of our unique family tradition. My wife's mother, Debbie, my wife, we met in high school in Tucson, Arizona, and I would go over to her house, and her mother was always making Christmas ornaments out of eggs, goose eggs, chicken eggs, pigeon eggs, even ostrich eggs. And she got me hooked into this to actually use Dremel tools to cut open eggs and to create little dioramas inside eggs. And so in our house, getting out the family heirloom eggs and putting them on the tree is kind of a tradition.
Christmas Eve was always really big on my mom's side of the family and continues to be so. We would gather at my grandmother's house, and there was always the smell of sauce in the air. My grandmother on my mom's side is 100% Italian American, and she always trended away from the tradition of doing the Feast of the Seven Fishes and really trended more towards pasta. So we usually had stuffed shells, homemade meatballs, or just fettuccine or linguine. what was always torturous was to walk into the house and smell all of those wonderful smells, and to know that there were a number of hours until we got a chance to eat all together as a family. So our tradition was we would walk I think 2 or 3 blocks max up to the local Catholic church in which my mom had gone to worship growing up. And we went to Christmas Eve Mass. That was usually, late afternoon. And so many people went at the time that they actually had the gymnasium set up and did simultaneously Mass in the church and in the gymnasium. For whatever reason, we always went to Mass in the gym, the same place that we would return to for fish fries during Lent. And I can remember as a kid at times really finding it difficult to keep my mind focused on the service and not necessarily trending more towards the meal that was upcoming, or towards, of course, opening presents as a little girl. One tradition actually at my grandmother's house in this community in Sharpsville that was really unique was the fact that Santa Claus actually visited every house on Christmas Eve. And my cousins and I anxiously awaited the arrival of Santa Claus inside my grandmother's home because he would hand out kind of a preview gift of what was to come the next morning. We also got a popcorn ball that, to our mind, we felt like Santa Claus just pulled from the same store of popcorn balls every single year. It just it was quickly cast aside. We were really eager to get that gift. And it was just it was a wonderful tradition that actually, continues, and something that I'll always associate with my childhood and those holiday traditions. One hallmark of my dad's side of the family and the Christmas traditions are actually homemade stockings that my aunt made for each and every one of us grandkids, and that I'll always have with me. My aunt and her husband spent a lot of time abroad, living internationally throughout my childhood, and it was always kind of a strong symbol of her presence, even if she couldn't necessarily be with us physically throughout the year. And I actually have that stocking with me. So here it is here, and it has Rosie across the top. My name's Sierra, but my middle name's Rose, and my aunt always has referred to me as Rosie, and so it's like a really lovely just symbol of our relationship, and also our connection to my grandfather, who also called me Rosie throughout my life.
I would say me and my husband are just starting to build traditions together, but we kind of both have separate traditions. Our biggest one is decorating the tree together. It's a special time that we kind of set aside, a day where we make it all Christmas related. We decorate the inside of the house, the outside of the house, and then we finish up by putting all the ornaments on the tree and then having a hot cocoa bar and watching The Grinch. So that's probably my favorite holiday tradition that we have. A tradition that's been passed down in my side of the family is what we call the red brick cake. It is something my great-great-grandmother started and passed it down, and it turned into the red brick cake because my nanny baked it. It's a red velvet cake in a Christmas tree pan, and she baked it a little bit too much, and it became really hard for a couple years in a row. So we call it the red brick cake, and it's something that me, all my sisters, my mom, we make for Christmas dinner. I like to have it nice and moist, but when I first learned, because it isn't just a recipe out of a box, it's a homemade recipe that's been passed down. So it's been tweaked. I think we've got a lot better at baking it. My grandma just had a couple years where she cooked it a little bit too long. My favorite thing that we do with my husband's side of the family is on Christmas Eve, his whole family gathers together and we do our gift exchange with the whole family. We have 7 nieces, so each of us buys for our godniece, and we get to exchange gifts, and then we play one family game where we're usually similar to like a white elephant for the older siblings, and it's just a really fun time for us to gather together and celebrate.
Our traditions as a family have changed a little bit through the years. Probably the biggest tradition, I did not grow up in Pittsburgh. I grew up about 2 hours north of Pittsburgh, and so our biggest tradition was celebrating Christmas at home here in Crawford County early, and then trucking everybody in the car every year and heading to Pittsburgh and doing the rounds on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, visiting a lot of different relatives. So for the longest time as a kid, my celebration of Christmas was largely spent bundled up in the car, traveling from home to home. You know, later on, one of the big traditions that we had for many, many years, before Christmas Eve, making sure to take a trip down to the Strip District and wade through the crowds in all the different stores to buy olives and cheese and especially fish, multiple kinds of fish at Woolies. Actually, that was a tradition that started maybe when my sister and I went to college, and everybody would come home, and we lived, like I said, a couple hours away, even when 79 was finished, and we still would get early and on Christmas Eve day, get up and drive those 2 hours down to the Strip and wander all day. I just loved the crush of people and the Santa hats and the people rushing to get their olives before they had to go somewhere. And later, I was still doing that with friends. Hearing people on the phone lamenting how high their cheese counter number was. I mean, it's a fun holiday atmosphere. And I have to say, that was one of my personal favorite, what started as a family tradition.
We've done the pickle ornament tradition every year. Even as adults, whenever we're together, we always have the pickle ornament, and we are still just as competitive as we were before. This year is going to be different because we won't all be together, but we all do have our own pickle ornament, and I had to purchase my own pickle ornament this year for my tree. So there won't be a search for the pickle ornament, but it is carefully hung on the tree as a featured ornament on the front side of the tree. So I think we'll be saving the pickle ornament search for next year rather than trying to do it virtually.
Of course, this year with the pandemic, it's not, wise or recommended for us to gather together as a large extended family and be in the same space. One thing I've decided to do is, as best I can, recreate the recipe of my grandmother's homemade sauce and meatballs. So I have all of those ingredients waiting in the fridge to me, and I'll be certainly thinking of her, as I'm pulling together that meal at some point over the Christmas holiday. And also too, if Mother Nature decides to cooperate over these next few days in the holiday season, we hope to be able to spend some time, with my parents outside and enjoy one another's company over a fire and with masks on, and certainly hoping that, we're all doing what we can to ensure that our loved ones have many years of holiday enjoyment to come.
Some of the celebrations are changing a bit. Our groups are a lot smaller. Some people aren't joining, people that haven't been really around each other, or people that are out of state. So we'll be having some people join in via Zoom and FaceTime for some of our usual traditions.
So it'll be a much, much smaller gathering. And we're not doing the whole seafood feast this year. I might try and squeeze in a quick trip to Woolies to get something and cook it by myself at home. We've really scaled back. We'll still do something on Christmas Eve. That tends to be the big focus. Like so many people, I think we haven't totally figured that out this year, and we're just kind of keeping everybody apart as much as possible, and yet trying to be festive at the same time.
My family can't be together this year, and so my parents actually baked these cookies and lovingly packaged them and mailed them to my husband and I, so that even though we can't be together, we can still enjoy the same foods we normally enjoy around the holidays. So this year we are doing our Christmas by mail, and we are going to get together over Zoom to celebrate.
Many American families, we're not going to be able to get together as a family. My kids are now in Washington State and Colorado, and we'll probably gather via Zoom and have a little sing-along. But we stay in touch through text and emails and phones and, of course, video conferencing. And I think that's going to be the way it is this year. This will be a memorable Christmas for many for odd reasons, but it's one that's going to stand out in our family history.
There it is. There's the pickle ornament. You can't buy it in the shop because we're sold out.